you have neighbors or anybody that wasn't able to be here tonight but would like to tune in, and can do that on WebEx on Metro's YouTube channel. Still got one or two joining us here. We'll kind of slow walk this just a little bit, see if any others are joining. This is the 18th Avenue Traffic Calming project. This was a little bit of a late comer into the program. We had some sort of last minute changes in Council District 2, so we're glad y'all are part of the program now. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Jeff Hammond. I'm with a group called Birch Transportation. We are a consulting firm that works for the Nashville Department of Transportation. That's NDOT that you see on each of these slides. And we help administer the traffic calming program for Metro. A very popular program. We'll discuss that here in just a minute. We also have Jordan Lipsey on the phone, who is working with our team as well. Three things I really want to cover tonight. The first is kind of an overview of the program, as well as how 18th Avenue got inducted into it. Secondly, we'll look at some of the tools that we have at our disposal in the program. And then lastly, and probably spend most of our time here if we can, take a look at the preliminary concept that we've put together for expressing our thoughts on what traffic calming on 18th Avenue North could consist of. As I mentioned, if you just joined, this meeting is being recorded, so it'll be available a day or two after the meeting. And at the end of the presentation, I'll be giving you a link to NDOT's traffic calming webpage, and that's where you can find some directions on how to access this video on Metro's YouTube channel. So again, thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. We'll get started. So traffic calming has become more and more commonplace in our community. Most people have an idea now for what traffic calming consists of, at least the Nashville experience. We do focus on residential streets as opposed to commercial areas or industrial areas. We really want to strengthen the quality of life in Nashville's neighborhoods, and we find that speeding is often a real detriment to that. And so we really focus on those residential streets and residential areas in the street. 18th is a good example that there's just a little bit of commercial right up towards the Clarksville Pike end of the street, but then quickly it gets into the neighborhood. And so we really focus on those residential areas. We really try to structure physical solutions as opposed to signage or more educational type things. Those can be effective tools, and we do have some of those at our disposal, but we found that nothing slows traffic down quite as effectively as when we put something in the lanes and force cars to slow down and drive over those. And we do focus on speed reduction. We try not to push traffic volumes onto any other street. We try to keep traffic where it is, but just slow it down and get it to drive on your residential streets more responsibly. So those are some of the basics of the program. We have some tools to do that we'll cover here in just a minute. In addition to the engineering aspect, which is what we focus on, that's the infrastructure, the things that we can, the changes that we can affect in the roadway that we think have a positive impact on traffic. Because after all, that's NDOT's purview. The DOT does not have an enforcement arm. That belongs to MNPD, which I know we all know they do just a tremendous amount of other very important work, and they don't often have time to park a cruiser and write tickets that we, as much as we might appreciate that, and might do wonders for speeding when we can enforce it. They just don't have a lot of resources in that area. So we step in and try to help in the situation by changing the right of way. And then, as I mentioned, education can be a real positive too. There are some PSAs and some things that the department is working on. You may have seen some of that, but that's a helpful component as well. But in this program, we focused on the engineering. And we like to show this slide to reinforce one of the reasons that we do that. Whenever we go into neighborhoods or people ask us to come in and do some traffic calming, almost always, one of the big reasons is people say, you know, we can't even walk up and down our street without fearing for our lives practically. It feels very dangerous. In some cases, the data may tell us that it is dangerous, unfortunately. And so when as more and more in Nashville neighborhoods, we have different people wanting to use the streets in different ways, whether it's by walking, by riding a bike, by riding a scooter, using transit, any number of things. We have to get in and work together to use those streets safely. And so this graphic illustrates the impact that car speed has on safety. And then the unfortunate event, if there is a pedestrian versus vehicle collision, that pedestrian has a much higher likelihood of not only walking away from it, but just surviving, period, if we can get cars to be down below about that 30-mile-an-hour threshold. So that's one reason among many that we do the traffic calming program and why it has become so popular. And this speaks to that. In the latest cohort where 18th Avenue was selected, we had over 500 applications for streets just like this one. So you're not alone in some of the speeding issues that you may have been seeing on your street. We're having them all over Davidson County, and people are recognizing that and asking to come into the program because of that. In this past cohort, council recognizes the need for the program and the popularity of it, and actually used some of the surplus budget that was there at that time to allocate towards additional projects. And so that's really why we're here on 18th Avenue. It was a recipient of those funds and got brought in probably a little bit ahead of schedule from where it would have been because of council's commitment to that. And I did see Councilmember Toombs joined us, and this goes for any of you, council member or not, unmute yourself at any time if you have a question. I can't always see the chat room and things like that, but feel free. I think you have the ability to do that. So good evening, council member, and any of you feel free to chime in. We always like to promote this tool because in the traffic calming program, we don't have the breadth of tools that NDOT or some other department might have. We really focus on one aspect, which is lowering speeds. And so if you have things like, signs that need to be replaced, or you may say we would like a crosswalk at a particular intersection, or any of those types of requests, those are all valid and very good requests, but those should go through this tool, Hub Nashville. It's hub.nashville.gov, or you can pick up the phone and call 311. The operator will walk you through that. It's a great clearinghouse for all things metro government. So any request, not just in the DOT, but pretty much every department is represented there. Feel free to use that. It's a great resource that our city government provides us as constituents. How 18th and how every project gets into this program is the same. It always starts with an application. We're always asked to come in to every street that we do. There are typically 2 application windows per year. And as I mentioned, we get a lot of applications. We take all of those requests and we go out twice a year and begin collecting data. 75% of the scores that come out of that data that help us prioritize which projects we're going to do, 70% of it has to do with the behavior of traffic. That's the vehicle speeds that are measured, and that's the volume of traffic that we count on your street. So that's the lion's share of how these projects are selected, how fast traffic's going and how much car traffic there is. The other 30% has to do with some of those other types of modes we were talking about. For instance, are there destinations that make sense to make a walking trip? Are there schools in the area? Are there parks in the area? Is there transit service nearby? Those things that might influence more walking trips. That boosts the score if you have those things. We also look at accommodations. Are there sidewalks? Are there bike lanes? Are there those types of things? If you have those, your score actually goes down, with the philosophy being, well, traffic may be fast on this street, but at least people have a sidewalk, and so we try to prioritize streets that don't have that. You guys have some of both of that. You've got some sidewalks. You don't have a complete sidewalk network, and so we recognize all of that. And all of that rolls into a composite score, and then we rank all of these streets accordingly. There's one other aspect, which is there a documented instance of a pedestrian and vehicle crash? And so some streets have that, some don't, but that influences the score as well. So some of that data specific to 18th Avenue is shown here. Your speed was not as high as many of them that we work on. You've got a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed, and the documented speed that we collected is right there at that. So that's good news. You're on kind of the lower end of that. You've got some scores that make up for it in other areas. One of that is the traffic volume. That's not incredibly high. That number, you may be surprised that there's 1,400 cars a day on your street. People often are. That's pretty typical for a street like this in a residential area. But 23 feet wide, that becomes important to us as we're designing a potential traffic calming project. And the section that we're looking at is about a mile, it's about half a mile long. Now, I want to say a word about that. You see an asterisk here. The initial application was for Cass Street to McKinney Avenue. And if you're familiar, and I'm sure most of you are, that's a very short, that's just 2 or 3 blocks. That's a very short project. And so as our team we worked with the NDOT engineers, looked at that, and Councilmember Toombs weighed in on this as well and was supportive of the change, I think, that we ended up making. We said, you know, the street has pretty much the same characteristics all the way up and around the curve to 14th Avenue. Let's lengthen this request. We typically don't do that. We typically kind of take the request, but when it makes sense and it's a good logical terminus to extend it, we will do that. And we've done that in this case. And let me show you that on a map. So I know this is a little bit small print, but hopefully you can see it. The project that we're working on is 18th Avenue North, and that is the green line that runs right in the middle of the screen, up and down, north and south. And you see as you go from south to north, it comes up and then kind of hooks around and stops. And where it stops, that's 14th Avenue North. That's a stop sign there. On the south side, we kept the limit at Cass Street, and you may say, and that is also an always stop as well. And you may say, well, why didn't you go to Clarksville Pike? We looked at that. We could have, but that last remaining stretch from Cass to Clarksville is pretty commercial. There's some, repair shops and different things, and we really try to stay out of those areas. So what we try to do though is come in right as the neighborhood sort of takes over from a land use standpoint and work to put the traffic calming in that way. So that's our project. We're going from Cass to 14th Avenue North. That's the green line, and the green on this map represents, you see others here, it represents traffic calming projects that are under development. And so if you live on 18th Avenue, you may be aware that we're currently working on Kello Street, the section that's east of 18th Avenue. We're working on, looks like 22nd Avenue. So we got a couple of other projects in the area, and green, all that tells us is it has not been completed yet. It's in the process. And so 18th now joins that group. The purple lines that you see here mean that the street has been applied for, but not yet accepted into the program. So if you're out and you notice a street that you think might be a good candidate, you can check this map and see if it has been applied for. And then the blue lines, particularly the blue dotted lines, indicate a project that has already been implemented. Most of the time, that means there's speed cushions or speed humps on the project, but not always. Sometimes it's a different type of traffic calming, but that gives you some idea. If you want to go and drive these, see a street that has had this treatment and see what it's all about. Although you're probably familiar with like Clay Street and 15th and 16th Avenue that recently had a project done, you can do that. This map is available. It's on Metro's traffic calming website. It's the tracker, and it's interactive. It's all over Davidson County, so you can pan around and look at anything you want to there. All right, so discuss now a few of the tools that we have, and I'd just like to do this to define when I show you the concept plan that we've put together for this project. You'll have a better understanding of what it is we're talking about when we talk about speed cushions and those kinds of things. This is really the bread and butter of this program. A lot of people think of what we do as the speed cushion program. That's not a bad description. We use these on pretty much every project now for a couple of reasons. One is this is a known product to us. We've been using this product for about 5 years now. These cushions go, like I said, on just about every project that Nashville has done. And so it's a known commodity. We know what we're getting. These are manufactured. They're not site built. They come out on a pallet, and our crews bolt those down, and we know how traffic interacts with it. We know they work, we know they're durable, and they hold up, and they stay looking good, and all of those kinds of things. So this is kind of our go-to treatment. It's called speed cushions because I don't know, I guess the name kind of implies they look like little pillows perhaps on the road. They are broken like that for a reason, as opposed to one piece all the way across. And that has to do with our emergency response partners. Ambulances and fire trucks have a little bit of a wider wheelbase. They're bigger vehicles, so they're wider. And they can straddle these, not totally. They'll still be impacted and still have to slow down a little bit for them, even those largest vehicles. But it minimizes the impact to those folks who need to get to where they're going very quickly. And so everybody else, though, even kind of full-size trucks and things, are going to have to slow down to drive over these. You see a 2-cushion configuration here and a 3-cushion configuration here. If you are really observant, you might see in the lower right-hand picture this 3-cushion with little white flexible delineators, or in the upper left-hand picture, you see our sign assembly there. The main idea on how we configure these is we just want to get from edge of pavement to edge of pavement and not leave an opportunity for people to drive around these, because we know they will. If they're able to drive around them, they will. And so we use signs, we use delineators, and we use the width of the cushions themselves just to make sure that they're going to be effective and someone can't drive around them. They're only about 3 inches tall, but that's enough. That tends to be pretty effective, and they do have a varied length. So in this picture in the bottom left-hand corner, that length of the cushion, we can change that. We don't have many options, but it can be either 7 foot, a 10.5 foot, or 14-foot cushion. We really have opted as a default to use the 10.5 foot cushion, kind of that middle ground of aggressiveness and comfort, and it tends to work well. We reserve the shortest ones, the 7-foot ones. That's the most aggressive ones. We really try to reserve those for the most urban neighborhoods, and then the larger ones, the 14-foot ones, used more in rural areas where we may not be looking for quite as drastic a reduction in speed.
Question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
This is Erica Anderson. I heard you say that you try to extend the speed cushions from edge to edge, and that makes a lot of sense because I myself will try to drive around them if I have the option. I will admit that. But how do you keep a road ADA compliant for people with disabilities and or pedestrians with strollers, etc., when there isn't a continuous sidewalk. Because as you know, you mentioned 18th, even in the area you mentioned, doesn't have a continuous sidewalk. It's on a bus route. There's a lot of pedestrians. And so if you're using a speed cushion, but there isn't a way to get around it, then you're forcing people with wheels to go right through the middle of the road.
Yeah. So when I say edge to edge, it may be literal, but generally it's not. One of the things that we always will strive to do, and 18th is a good example because you guys, sometimes you got curb and gutter, sometimes you don't, sometimes there's a shoulder, sometimes there's not. There's no striping, there's no edge lines that kind of define a walking shoulder and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a little tricky, but a typical application would look like that upper left-hand picture. So when I say edge to edge, I don't often mean that literally. We can get by with about a 4-foot gap in between these. 4 feet, there's really no car that can get through. I mean, everything's got a wheelbase that's wider than 4 feet, so they're going to have to hit those cushions, and it's going to slow them down. So we look at that. It's a good point, and we will continue to make sure that we do have, some reasonable clearance. But most cars, strollers, that kind of thing, can kind of navigate a 3-foot width without much problem. And we really have not had a lot of complaints about that when we go into a neighborhood, and even with a lot of walking and things. It really has not been an issue. Even if it really kind of encroaches over into where a pedestrian may be walking, the slopes on these are very gradual. You could easily push a stroller over that. A wheelchair is legitimate, and that might create some issues, but we'll continue to pay attention to that, make sure we've got as much side clearance as we can.
Yeah, we've got a lot of group homes in our area, and homes with elders, and they use wheelchairs, and sometimes they're using wheelchairs where they're hand powered, not with a motor. And I've even my husband's even pushed someone who had a motored one, but the motor died out like down the street. And it's hard for some of those older folks to get over bumps, and some of them, even if the sidewalks, which are often blocked by in our area by oh gosh, word escaping me, the utility poles, they're often
blocked. Oh yeah, right.
So they will use the street by default because they can't use the sidewalk because it's blocked and they can't get their wheelchair through it.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to make life harder. I want traffic calming. I put in the application. Want it to work for everyone.
Sure. I was just running the numbers here. On average, your street, not every location is identical, but on average, I think I said it's a 23-foot wide street. If I take off the width of these, which is 6-foot cushions, that's 12 feet off. That leaves 11 feet. We leave that 4-foot gap in the middle, so that leaves us a 7-foot. So that's going to put us 3.5 feet on either edge, which should be plenty. And I doubt someone is walking much more in the road than that. They probably don't want to be if they are. So I think we'll be okay, but we will certainly note that for every location that we are planning, and
Great.
do so accordingly. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A close cousin to that, not one we use very often because of the impact on emergency response, is speed tables. We use these occasionally. Parks Department likes them, in the park where a fire truck response or something is not nearly as common. So we can use these. It's the same product, same recycled rubber, made by the same manufacturer. It works very similar. It just doesn't have that gap in between. But that is out there. We do have some before and after data. I think most people that have driven these, if you've driven on the ones on clay or streets off of clay, you probably have seen this. It's not foolproof. You may well still find there are some people who still drive too fast. But by and large, these have been proven to be pretty effective in most Nashville streets. This is just some before and after data showing that speeds are something like 8, 10, 12 miles an hour lower on average. But I'll tell you, it really depends on the street, the configuration of the cushions, and how fast traffic was going to begin with. As I mentioned, y'all do not have the fastest street of anybody, and so you may not see as drastic a reduction here. But for what it's worth, the numbers do bear out that these are pretty effective treatments. Another tool that we have is kind of in that educational type of a category. We often use radar feedback signs when we really can't use speed cushions. We would much rather use a speed cushion. We find the effectiveness to be there, but sometimes hills are too steep or curves are too sharp, or we just have one driveway after the next and we just can't fit one in without, we feel like being a burden to someone getting in and out of their driveway, which we don't want to do. So when situations preclude the ability to use a speed cushion, we will sometimes supplement in a feedback sign. It does what it says it does. If you haven't seen these, you drive it and it flashes your speed up. If you're going too fast, you may get a little message, or you may get a flashing light just to remind you that the speed limit is 25 on most of these streets, and you're going a little bit over that. So it's a friendly reminder. Do have some before and after data on that, 6, 7 miles an hour. That's early in the deployment. Question continues to be, the longer these stay out, does that effectiveness continue, or do people just get used to this over time and it loses some of the effectiveness? So another tool we have and use occasionally is trying to visually narrow the road. We know that the wider the road looks and feels, that tends to encourage higher speeds. And so sometimes we find it advantageous to try and narrow that using pavement markings. When we can couple that, if there's on-street parking, or if you want to do bike lanes and those types of things, if that were part of a project, that might work better. We have to be very careful in just introducing new pavement markings, like in the picture you see here. The attempt was to visually narrow the road by adding a center line, but sometimes that communicates to people that it is a more major street and it's okay to go fast. And so we have to really pay attention to that and try to think through that before we introduce new striping that is not there now. Some of our more urban areas, we use bulb outs and chicanes. Bulb outs, as the picture on the left there, where we really try to squeeze the roads. Some of these streets were built just very wide, and they have parking on them and those kinds of things. And so when we encounter that, sometimes we find it advantageous to narrow the road, particularly at intersections, and try to slow down some of those turning speeds. Chicanes are a real special one. There's only a couple places in Davidson County where these exist, and it's kind of artificially zigzagging the road back and forth to try to force drivers to slow down. It works okay if there's parking. You can kind of couple that with some other treatments, but not one we use very often. Another one, again, is in the toolbox. We don't use it very often. Is traffic circles. And it kind of illustrates another reason why we like speed cushions, and that's because they're very predictable. Traffic circles are not this way. Some people will turn in front if you're going to turn left at an intersection, which is where these are always used. Some people will turn left in front of it. Some people will drive all the way around, as this sign shows. People do all kinds of things. People drive up over them a lot. School buses kind of have problems with them. So we don't use them very often just because of a lot of the other types of consequences that we have experienced. But it's a good tool, has its place, but you got to have a very broad intersection, a lot of pavement out there. All right, so that brings us to 18th Avenue itself. And as I mentioned, we're going from Cass Street, which is where these two stop signs are down here on the left-hand side of the slide, and going all the way up, and probably recognize. North is to the right here, so that may be throwing you off. Sorry about that, but it makes it a little more legible. We can do that. And then it curls around up here on the right-hand side of the screen at the other stop sign, and that's the stop sign at 14th Avenue. So this section, as I mentioned, is about a half mile. It's just under 2,700 feet long. And the way we lay these out, or the way we kind of conceptually design them, is we look at that distance between those two control points, being Cass and 14th Avenue. There are no stops in between, so that's just one long, uninterrupted street. We'll look at that distance, and then we're looking for an average spacing somewhere in the order of around 4 or 5, on occasion, maybe 600 feet. An urban area like this one, you guys, I would consider more of an urban neighborhood. We might shrink that distance just a little bit. Further areas out that are a little more suburban or rural might have a larger gap in between the cushions. But in this case, I think we'd be looking for something around 400 to 500 feet. And so we simply divide that number in and come up with an average cushion spacing, and then go out and try to lay those in. So for this segment that's about a half mile long, we think that 5 sets of speed cushions are going to give us good results. And so that's what you see here. So along the limit of the project, every time you see one of these little yellow trapezoids with a C in it, that's our proposed cushion location. Now, I know that's not very detailed, what you're looking at. I hope it's enough to give an idea. I'll walk through that because you may not be able to read this, but the way this works is we'll present this concept to you. If you guys say, yeah, it looks good, we go back and we do develop much more detailed plans so that you will be able to tell exactly where we're proposing it. It'll say something like, this one's going to be 42 feet west of the driveway at 123 18th Avenue. It's to that detail. And so that helps our contractors know exactly where to place them, but you all get a chance to review that as well. So just keep that in mind. You will have the opportunity to see something more detailed if you want to see it later in the process. So the first set of speed cushions, as you're going north from Cass Street, or in this case, going to the right of the slide, coming down past the cemetery, just after you get past Simpkins Street, that would be the first speed cushion. That's probably about 300. On the ends, we try to cheat our first set of speed cushions a little bit towards those stop signs, just so that people don't get too far into the neighborhood before they recognize, okay, I'm on a street with speed cushions. I've got to slow down. So that's probably 350 feet or so there. And then continuing to the right, you go past Pecan Street, and then just before you get to Cecilia, I think there's maybe some new construction right there. There's a set of speed cushions planned there. Continuing to go. I don't know why I said that. You guys, new construction on a lot of places in the street. Y'all are aware of that. You get down just before New Bell Street, maybe is how you say it. I'm not sure. Another set of speed cushions there, and then there's a little bit of a gap, a little longer of a gap than other places, and that's 2 reasons. There's a little bit of a hill. This one is right down there at the creek. I think there's a little culvert right there. That's about what we're planning. But then you start climbing again. So that hill, we have to be very careful. We have some standards that prevent us from placing these on a slope. But probably the bigger consideration here is you see the number of houses. All of those driveways are right side by side, and it makes it difficult to space those exactly where we would want them if we had our druthers. But this doesn't concern us at all. It's something that we deal with all the time, and I don't think it's going to impact the effectiveness of the project at all. We're just going to have a little bit of a gap there because one of our policies is that we try really hard not to put any speed cushions within 15 feet of a driveway. We don't want you to be driving over these things every time you got to turn in and out of your driveway. So we pay attention to that and steer clear of that. And so there's going to be that little gap there. But then as we continue north past Kello Street, there would be a section there, or a speed cushion there. And then the last one is just kind of as you get into that last turn, right there across from the cemetery property over here that looks just like a big field. Got one more right there spotted. So that's the 5 locations. Speed cushions, pretty basic project. It looks a lot like most of our projects. And so let me stop there and see if there's any comments or concerns with any of that or questions about any of that. What have I not made clear? And if you don't have any, that's okay too. I'm going to take that. Go ahead.
We had the benefit recently of having Root plant nearly 20 trees on 18th, which I know will help a lot with the slowing of trees. They're sidewalk trees. The slowing of traffic, excuse me, as soon as they're big enough, decades from now.
Yeah.
At the same level, it sounded like that speed cushions do at 8 to 10 miles. The trees have the same effect as I know about 15%. But that's not all the way down the sidewalk. So as like another long-term solution, is it possible to also work to have more planted down the further end? I think the trees stop right after the third speed cushion as you're going north on 18th from Cass. So is it possible to also plan to put more down 18th?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nice things about speed cushions is, because we're using these modular ones, they're very easy to change. They can be moved, but I think more importantly is they don't preclude you from doing anything else you want to do. Sidewalk construction or planting trees or any of that kind of stuff really doesn't affect any of that. So we like that for that reason. So yeah, continue to make those plans, make those requests. If that's something that the neighborhood wants to do, this will just be, in the lanes. And so I wouldn't see any issue at all with that.
But that's not your office to include that within your traffic calming measures.
That's correct. Yeah, we are pretty limited to those things that I just showed you, and so we don't do trees. That's a different group. But yeah, feel free to continue to pursue that.
I think our street, and Jamie's one of our the neighbors that lived recently down further down 18th. Jamie, is your street marked? Do you have lines on the street down at your end?
I don't think we do.
Because I don't think we do either. Down at my end, I'm closer to Simpkins.
Yeah, we don't have we don't have trees, we don't have lines. But I guess, Jeff, I guess I did have a question about the 15 feet from a driveway. Is that like possible with just how many houses we have on 18th and where I'm looking at these, and I basically live at the speed cushion on the farthest right of the screen, like that's right in front of my house, and I'm just curious how, I feel like it's gonna be very kind of interesting to see if you guys can make it. I guess you would squeeze it in between a driveway, maybe. Just curious about how that works
on some of that, but the answer is yeah, we actually can fit it. I was on the
You're cutting in and out.
Shift it where, yeah, can you hear me?
Now you're better.
Okay. We may have to shift things, but yeah, in every case, I was able to find a place where we can do that.
Okay. I mean, I'm just, thankful, Erica, just want to say thanks for doing this, and putting in the request. And then, Ms. Toombs, thanks for being on it as well and representing our council. I appreciate that.
All right. I'm going to, I'll keep going, but if you have other questions, I'll feel free to ask to go back to that. But I do want to kind of set some expectations for where we go from here. This is just probably an over complicated image showing the process. We're here at the red circle and the neighborhood meeting. And from this point, we'll go into that design process where we'll really, you know, nail these locations in very definitively. At that point, we have a decision. I mean, you all just kind of saw what we're thinking. This is not rocket science. It's laying in speed cushions. If we get them spaced right and put in the right spot and can meet all those criteria that we have, that's about all there is to it. And so in the past, we've always done a second meeting, but what we found in doing that is way more times than not, we'd come back to the second meeting. And it was basically what I just showed you without much change. And people would say, well, that was 2 or 3 months wasted. Why did you just keep going? So we now give you the opportunity. If what you just saw was pretty much what you had in mind and what you think you were getting and don't have much concern with that, we can skip that next meeting. We'll go ahead with the design and we will then post that on the website, so you will still have access to that, and we'll do that all in advance of moving to the kind of the final process, which is the ballot. If, however, you say, no, I think we'd really like to see the design before we and have an opportunity to talk about it again before we ballot, we're happy to do that. It's just that there may not be a lot of changes from what you just saw. So we kind of leave that to y'all at this point. Most of our projects are just moving on, but we can do it however you want to do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ballot process in the event that you do just want to move ahead and we don't meet again, so you'll have an expectation for what that's coming. But before I do that, though, I did want to point out a couple of these time figures. So we asked for a couple of months to do the design. I don't think it'll take nearly that long. We'll probably have it in a couple of weeks. The online ballot is a required 6-week process, so 2 months there is not too far out of line. And then the real kicker here is construction. I don't want anybody thinking that, you know, by spring break we will have these things in and your street will be slower. It's not. Unfortunately, we're not that fast. We've just got a huge backlog and we're doing a lot of neighborhoods. So we're right now looking at realistically about a year from the time the ballot is complete to when these are actually being installed. So that's not great news. I'm sorry, but I just wanted you to be aware of that from a time standpoint. But the ballot process is a required component of this program. Everybody who owns property adjacent to the right-of-way or abuts the right-of-way of this project will get one of these cards whenever we decide to send them out, and they will have a QR code that'll link you to the ballot and also to that set of design plans. So you'll be able to pull that up and see exactly what it is we're proposing, and then you can vote on it that way. You can also call in if you have residents that may not be as tech savvy and just want to call and talk to somebody. That number is there. They can certainly do that as well. As I mentioned, it's a 6-week process. And then at the end of that, we close those ballots. And if 2/3 of the people have voted in favor of it, we'll do the project. That's not 2/3 of a fixed number. We don't care how many people vote. It's just like a real election. We just look at, of the votes that come in, are 2/3 of the people in favor of it, and so that's how we vote. That's how we make that vote. If you're interested in the success rate of these projects, all that is actually online. You can peruse down through there and see every neighborhood that has gone through the process and whether it passed or whether it failed and by how much. But the overwhelming majority, once they get to this point, we're seeing that they do pass. But that's totally up to you all and your street and what y'all want to do with it. The people that get to vote is another question, and that is, as I mentioned, you have to own property that abuts the right-of-way of the project. And so this is a snapshot of what that looks like on the north end of the project. You see some parcels that have 2 houses. You all know those are being built that way, two houses on a lot, essentially. We do ballot both of those people, both those households. Even if the house itself, as you see this one down here at the bottom of the screen, looks like one house behind another, because they both own in common a portion of the lot that does abut 18th, both those households would continue to get the vote. I think everything else here is pretty straightforward. There aren't condominium complexes and those kinds of things. If an owner does own more than one property, we just let them vote one time. If a property appears to be vacant, and by appears, I mean, like, according to the tax rolls, there's not a building on it, then we don't send a ballot to that property owners either. We really focus on the resident owners of the street. Pointing out that these do go to owners is important. If you have rental properties on the street, the owner is going to get those. I know it may be in Michigan, it may be California, it may go who knows where, but that's where those cards will go, and they can vote. They're the ones that have that opportunity.
Jeff, how does that work if like I say I have a rental property on it? How would that work for me to get it to my current address?
We send it to the address on record, so we send it to the owner's address. Is that what you mean? I
guess, yeah. And Erica, just maybe send me the QR code just in case. Whenever it comes out.
If you have people that are renting their property, but yet they're, either way, they're strongly in support or they're strongly in not support, and they want to vote, just have them get in touch with their landlord, best I can tell you, because that's where we will send the cards. And it'd be great if the landlord gave them the opportunity to vote for them, but I mean, that's up to them. I think that is it. I want you to have my contact information. I'm Jeff. I'm the one on the green at the bottom. The NDOT address it looks like a generic address, and it is, but that's because there are several staff members that check in on that. So feel free to send that to them or to me or to both of us if you have questions or comments about this. I'd be glad to hear from you. And then the QR code that gets you to their website is right there. It's TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. Again, a lot of resources there, maps and procedure manuals and ballot results and all kind of stuff. So everything you wanted to know about Nashville's traffic calming program is there. But come back to that. Any other questions or comments as we wrap up?
Jeff, did y'all already assess whether or not our street would benefit from lines, or it would be one of those cases where lines do offer the counter effect?
We have probably not assessed that. I will say it's pretty rare that we introduce lines where they don't exist. So,
okay. We have a representative from our neighborhood org for Buena Vista Heights here. If this only applies, if the voting only applies to people who have properties that are touching 18th, is it still advisable for other neighbors to know about it? In y'all's experience? Like, how do you advise going about that? And that's a question directed more to Jeff.
Can you hear me?
I can now. No, I can't.
Apology.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. It's probably all my kids got home and they all jump on there.
You're back now.
Who knows what? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you all again. Appreciate you taking the time. Sorry, is that yet another question?
Or did you hear Erica's question? Sorry, I'm not sure.
I heard the one about striping, about adding lines. Is that?
So Buena Vista Heights is our community. We have a neighborhood org representative from leadership here. Not all of the neighbors have properties adjacent to 18th. So, and y'all's best recommendation, how do we talk to the other neighbors about this? After it's been voted on, before, what do y'all typically do?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the city won't have any interaction with them. You're welcome to spread the link to this meeting. They're welcome to contact us using this email. We'll be glad to provide any information we can to them. But our policy is we just interact with the groups right here on 18th. We just don't know where to draw the line. In other words, you know what I mean? So yeah, but feel free to send them that. You can get them resources. They won't have the opportunity to vote, but we're always happy for as many people to learn about these projects as we can.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Liza. I'm with the Buena Vista Heights neighborhood group. Thank you so much for all of this, because I think what I'm also taking away is just spreading the word is super helpful too. So we can try to help, the folks on 18th Ave know about the vote, but furthermore, the residents who aren't on 18th just know, hey, this is what's out there. Like we have, one for the 24th Avenue, and other folks I think can see, oh my gosh, they actually do really work really hard on these projects. So we're happy to definitely, recommend that people do this. And this was super informative, and I'm really glad to attend. Even though I personally don't live on 18th, I'm super excited about this and grateful for all the work y'all do.
Yeah, well, glad to have you, and thanks for your interest. And then, by the way, there's that project on Kello. It would have a video as well. I did not do that project, but that one's probably available on their website now.
Hi, Jeff. This is Councilwoman Toombs. I just wanted to thank you for your time and to thank y'all for extending the 18th Avenue project beyond the scope of the application. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it'll, if these things just sort of pop up for a couple of blocks and go back and go away again, I don't think it'll be nearly as effective as if you got kind of a good long run of street that's been calm. So I agree. Thanks for the suggestion. All right, everybody. Well, I'll let you have your evening back. Again, thanks for attending. Was that something else, Erica? Or?
I was going to reiterate, just from anecdotes I've heard from neighbors, people who do and don't live on 18th. 18th is a major thoroughfare, and I've heard lots of people tell me that they don't walk their dogs or take their kids out as much because 18th is scary. So I think this will really help improve our sense of community and connection. So thank you.
Well, I hope so. I hope it's always a good project and has long-lasting benefits for the neighborhood. That's what we hope. All right. Again, thanks everybody. This recording should be up here in the next couple of days, and certainly by the first of the week, I would say. And anything we can help you with in the meantime, feel free to reach out. With that, we'll wish you a very good evening. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.